Explain like I'm 5. Why does a headshot usually mean immediate turn off for the brain? I think your idea of a headshot is probably one that hit the T-box. It's extremely effective because it will damage the brainstem and spinal column, which is responsible for critical body functions like breathing and heartbeat and ability to move, even involuntary muscle spasms. If you've ever seen an IRL shooting incident and you see someone suddenly drop like a sack of potatoes, it's because of this. Either low calibers ping pong around in the skull and turn your brain to soup, or high calibers carry your brain out the back with them. You can survive. There's been lots of cases of people surviving with arrows in the head. Not for very long, but still surviving. There's also the famous case of the man who got a railroad spike through his head and lived on. If this context is in a combat sport where a fighter receives a headshot or blow to the head that knocks them out, mostly this is down to disrupting the function of the brain. For example, when a boxer is punched in the side of the jaw, the head rotates very quickly. This causes the skull to rotate quickly first, whilst the soft mushy brain itself slops around slowly, banging off the walls as it catches up like water sloshing in a bathtub. This can easily interrupt normal functioning of the brain, causing things like loss of consciousness. Just go look up one of those charts of entry wounds and exit wounds of certain bullets and just imagine what happens to everything in between. Now imagine that happening in the small confines of your brain. Well, when you put a giant hole in something like a brain, it usually turns off cause there is a giant hole where something used to be. Imagine that you have a fuse box full of cables which powers up a home. If you shoot a bullet dead in the center of it, the home goes to a full blackout death in most cases. Yes. There are a few cables connecting due to the fire and electrical discharge it causes within. When lights could come back for a millisecond twitching, but it gets fucked beyond repair. Before I started med school, my first ever clinical experience was a person with multiple gunshots to the head and pieces of white matter dripping onto his face. He still had a pulse. That's not to say that shots to the head aren't devastating. They obviously are. But there are plenty of people who have survived a shot to the head. Which is to say that headshot isn't an immediate turn off of brain function. It depends which areas of the brain are impacted. Whether or not you would want to survive with the type of damage that's often seen in such cases is a different question. Imagine your conscious thought as a Jenga tower and your brain is made up of all the individual pieces and each has a specific place. If you are smooth enough, you can pull a few pieces here and there. If you pull a piece roughly or just push the tower hard enough, you can drop the whole tower. If the tower was just knocked down, you might be able to put it back up. If the important pieces that have to go in a specific place have been removed, then the tower can't be put back together. I'd like to add in that this principle is called flaccid paralysis. So that's something you can look up to further your reading. Unlike in movies and games, even the most highly trained snipers have difficulty going for this kind of shot. A bullet is typically more damaging than a punch in the face. But our brains have a safety mechanism where a sudden trauma can shut the brain off. If it was a punch in the face, you will eventually wake up with a concussion and a headache. If it was a bullet, you might bleed to death before you have time to wake up. Of course, if the damage is bad enough, the part of your brain that controls heartbeat and breathing will be scrambled. The brain is very important to your body working, and the bullet usually bounce around inside the skull, causing extra damage. That being said, 110 headshots do not kill immediately.